Yoga is the yoga of power over the body and over the physical nature of man. According to the teaching of yogis, a practical study of Hatha Yoga gives man ideal health, lengthens his life, and gives him many new powers and capacities which an ordinary man does not possess and which might seem almost miraculous. Yogis affirm that a healthy and normally functioning body is more easily subjected to the control of consciousness and mind than a body which is sick, disordered, and unbalanced, and from which one never knows what is to be expected. Moreover, it is easier to disregard a healthy body, whereas a sick body subjects man to itself, makes him think too much of it, demands too much attention for itself. Therefore, the first aim of Hatha Yoga is a healthy body. At the same time, Hatha Yoga prepares the physical body of man to bear all the hardships connected with the functioning in him of the higher psychic forces of higher consciousness, will, intense emotions, etc. These forces do not function in ordinary man. Their awakening and development produce terrific strain and pressure on the physical body. And if the physical body is not trained and prepared by special exercises, if it is in its usual sickly condition, it is unable to withstand the pressure and cannot keep up with the unusually intensive work of the organs of perception and consciousness, which is inevitably connected with the development of the higher forces and possibilities of man. In order to enable the heart, brain, and nervous system, and also other organs, the role of which in the psychic life of man is little, if at all known to Western science, to bear the pressure of new functions, the whole body must be well balanced, harmonized, purified, put in order, and prepared for the new and tremendously hard work which awaits it. There are many rules evolved by yogis with regard to the regulation and control of the activities of different organs of the body. Yogis assume that the body cannot be left to itself. Instincts do not guide its activity with sufficient vigor. The intervention of the intellect is imperative. One of the fundamental ideas of yogis regarding the body is that in its natural state, the body can by no means be taken as the ideal apparatus it is often thought to be. Many functions are only necessary to preserve the existence of the body in various unfavorable conditions, and these are functions which are the result of other wrong functions. Further, yogis think that many of these unfavorable conditions have already disappeared, whereas the functions created by them continue to exist. And yogis affirm that by abolishing these needless functions, it is possible greatly to increase the energy which can be used for useful work. Again, there are many functions which are in a rudimentary state, but which may be developed to an inconceivable degree. The body given by nature is, from the yogi's point of view, only material. And a man on his way to his highest aims can make use of this material, and after reshaping and remodeling it in a suitable way, can create for himself a weapon which will enable him to attain his aims. Yogis affirm that the possibilities latent in the body are enormous. And yogis possess numerous methods and means for decreasing the useless functions of the body and for awakening and bringing to light the new powers and capacities which lie dormant in it. Yogis say that only an insignificant portion of the energy of the body is used profitably, that is, in preserving the life of the body and in serving the higher aims of man. The greater part of the energy produced by the body is, in their opinion, spent quite uselessly. But they consider it possible to make all the organs of the body work for a single aim, that is, to take all the energy created by the organs and make it serve the higher aims, which at present it often only hinders. Hatha Yoga deals with the physical nature of man in the strictest sense of the word, that is, with vegetable and animal functions. And with regard to this physical nature, yogis have long known certain laws which have only in quite recent times been perceived by Western science. First, the extraordinary independence of the separate organs of the body and the absence of one common center governing the life of the organism, and second, the capacity of one organ to do, to a certain extent, and in certain cases, the work of another. In observing the independence of various organs and parts of the body, yogis came to the conclusion that the life of the body consists of thousands of separate lives. Each such life presupposes a soul or a consciousness. Yogis recognize these independent lives possessing separate souls not only in all the various organs but also in all the tissues and in all the substances of the body. This is the occult side of Hatha Yoga. These lives and these consciousnesses are the spirits of the body. According to the theory of Hatha Yoga, man is able to subordinate them to himself to make them serve his aims. Hatha yogis learn to control the breathing, the circulation of the blood, and nervous energy. They are said to be able, by holding the breath, almost to stop all the functions of the body, sink into a lethargy in which man can remain for any length of time without food or air and without harm to himself. On the other hand, they are said to be able to intensify the breathing and by making it rhythmic with the beating of the heart to take in an enormous supply of vital force and to use this force, for instance, for the treatment of diseases, both their own and other people's. By an effort of will, yogis are supposed to be able to suspend the circulation of the blood in any part of the body, or, on the contrary, to direct to it an increased supply of fresh arterial blood and nervous energy. It is precisely on this that their method of treatment is based. By learning to govern their own bodies, yogis at the same time learn to govern the whole of the material universe. The human body represents a universe in miniature. It contains everything from mineral to God, and this is for them not a mere figure of speech, but the most real truth. Through his body, man is in contact with the whole of the universe and with everything in it. The water contained in the human body connects man with all the water of the earth and the atmosphere. The oxygen contained in the human body connects man with the oxygen in the whole universe. The carbon with the carbon, the vital principle with everything living in the world. It is quite clear why this must be so. The water entering into the composition of the man's body is not separated from the water outside the body. It is only as if it flowed through the man. It is the same with air and with all the chemical substances of the body, etc. They all merely travel through the body. By learning to control the various principles, spirits, according to occult terminology, composing his body, a man becomes able to control the same principles in the world, that is, the spirits of nature. At the same time, a right understanding of the principles of Hatha Yoga teaches a man to understand the laws of the universe and his own place in the world. Even as elementary acquaintance with the principles and methods of Hatha Yoga shows the impossibility of studying yoga without a teacher and without his constant supervision. The results attained by the methods of Hatha Yoga are equally the work of the pupil himself and the work of the teacher on the pupil. In other yogas, this may not be so clear, but in Hatha Yoga there cannot be the slightest doubt about it, especially when the man who studies it has understood the principles of asanas. Asanas is the name given in yoga to certain special postures of the body which a yoga must learn to assume. Many of these postures appear quite impossible at first glance. They look as if a man either must have no bones at all or else must break all his tendons. There already exists a sufficient number of photographic and even cinematographic pictures of the asanas, and the difficulties of these postures is evident to anyone who has had the opportunity of seeing such pictures. Even the description of the asanas, which can be found in certain books of Hatha Yoga, show the difficulty and the practical impossibility for any man. Nevertheless, the Hatha Yogis study these asanas, that is, they train the body to assume all these incredible postures. Everyone can try one of the easiest asanas. This is the posture of Buddha is so called because the sitting Buddha is usually represented in this asana. The simplest form of this asana is when a yogi sits cross-legged, not Turkish fashion, but with one foot placed on the opposite knee and the other knee on the other foot. The legs being tightly pressed to the ground and to each other. Even this asana, the simplest of all, is impossible without long and persistent training. But as a matter of fact, the posture just described is not a complete asana. If one looks closely at the statues of the Buddha, it will be seen that both feet lie on the knees, heels upward. In such a position, the legs are interwoven in a manner which looks quite impossible without bones being broken. But people who have been in India have seen and photographed this asana in its complete form. Apart from the outward asanas, there also exist inward asanas, which consist in changing various inner functions, as for instance, slowing down or quickening of the action of the heart and the entire circulation of the blood. They further enable man to control a whole series of inner functions which ordinarily are not only outside the control of man, but in many cases completely unknown to European science or only beginning to be suspected. The meaning and ultimate aim of the outward asanas is precisely the attainment of control over the inner functions. Self-instruction in the asanas presents insurmountable difficulty. There exist descriptions of over 70 asanas, but even the most complete and detailed description does not give the order in which they should be studied. And this order cannot be indicated in books because it depends on the physical type of a man. That is to say, that for every physical type a different order is necessary. For every man there exists one or several asanas which he can learn and practice more easily than the others. But the man himself does not know his own physical type and does not know which asanas are easier for him and with which he should begin. Moreover, he does not know the preparatory exercises which are different for every asana and for every physical type. All this can be determined for him only by a teacher possessing complete knowledge of Hatha Yoga. After a certain period of observation and after certain trial exercises which he sets his pupil, the teacher determines his physical type and tells him with which of the asanas he should begin. One pupil must begin with the 17th asana, another with the 35th, a third with the 57th, a fourth with the first, and so on. Having established which of the asanas the pupil must try to master, the teacher gives him special and successive exercises which he demonstrates to him. These exercises gradually bring him to the desired asana, that is, enable him to assume and keep for a certain time the requisite posture of the body. When the first asana is attained, the teacher determines the next asana, which the pupil must try to attain, and again gives him exercises which in the course of time bring him to this asana. The study of a wrong asana contains almost insurmountable difficulties. And moreover, as is quite definitely pointed out in the books expounding the principles of Hatha Yoga, a wrong asana kills a man. All this taken together shows quite clearly that the study of Hatha Yoga, as well as the study of other yogas, is impossible without a teacher. The chief method of Hatha Yoga, the method which makes possible subordination to the will of the physical body, and even of the unconscious physical functions, is continuous work on the overcoming of pain. The overcoming of pain, the overcoming of the fear of physical suffering, the overcoming of continual and incessant desire for quiet, ease and comfort, create the force which transfers a Hatha yogi to another level of being. In the literature, chiefly theosophical, relating to the history of the principles and methods of yoga, there exists a difference of opinion which has a certain significance. There are authors who maintain that the study of yoga must necessarily begin with Hatha Yoga, and that without Hatha Yoga it cannot give any results. And there are other authors who maintain that Hatha Yoga may be studied after the other yogas, especially after Raja Yoga, when the pupil is already in possession of all the powers given by new consciousness. The most correct solution of the question would be to assume that in this case, as well as in many other cases, the difference depends upon the type. That is, there are types of men who must necessarily begin with Hatha Yoga, and these are types for whom paths through the other yogas are possible. In the scientific records of investigators on Indian asceticism, which exist in Western literature, Hatha yogis are unfortunately often confused with fakirs. The causes of such a confusion can be easily understood. The investigators who observe external phenomena and do not understand the principles of yoga cannot distinguish original phenomena from imitation. Fakirs imitate Hatha Yoga, but what is done by Hatha Yogis for the attainment of a definite aim, which is clearly understood by them, becomes itself the aim for fakirs. Fakirs begin therefore with the most difficult, with extremes, and mostly with practices which injure the physical body. They hold their arms or one arm stretched upwards until the arms wither. They look at the fire or at the sun until they become blind. They deliver themselves to be eaten by insects and the like. For a certain period of time, some of them in this way develop in themselves strange and supernormal capacities, but their way has nothing in common with the way of Hatha Yoga.